Hi. I'm going to describe how guitars work. So a brief history. Guitars were first invented in Spain, but there's a lot of other instruments similar to them, such as the lute. Um, an old Spanish guitar was different and it had a different number of strings, and it wasn't as wide, such as this one. The the way guitar works is basically by vibrating strings. They if you tune them up using the little tuners on the top, it becomes tighter and the frequency increases, but the amplitude lowers and the note doesn't last as long. It's the opposite effect when you tune down. This is why they have different notes in the first place and they're not just the same string. That's a basic example of how they work, and they vibrate differently. So, so an example of what I mean is if I play the bottom E string and I tune up, the frequency gets higher, it lasts longer, and the amplitude lowers a bit. And that's me tuning down. Now, the how this makes sound is because the vibrations of the string pass through the soundboard, which is basically transfers them to the inside of the guitar, which has these little acoustics, which reverberate the sound and allow it to travel throughout the guitar, and then it comes out as a loud sound that we can audibly hear using our ears, not just the vibration. So an example of this would be where if I play a song like, for example, or something similar to that. Basically, it travels through the soundboard, or it travels into the guitar through this, and the vibrations of the string travel into the soundboard, and you can't really see, but inside of here, there's a lot of little like boards that carry the sound better and stuff, and that is what is basically allowing the sound to like come out of here because the vibrations pass through and stuff, and it allows me to play interesting stuff and not just like something like that. Electric guitars work differently. They have an amp and a cord, and they also have a bunch of controls, but the most important part is the pickups. The pickups are these little things. The pickups basically pick up the vibrations of the sound waves, and then they transport them into electrical signals, the which transport the sound waves through the wire into the amp. Basically, what happens here, there's a lot of controls that they don't really matter. They control different sound properties. But basically, what happens here is the sound is extruded from. A similar thing happening with the electric. See, the pickup's going through, and then it's going down through the wire into my amp, which you can't see, and then produces the sound. So, like, it allows me to play things like. Or something like. Yeah, it's basically, it just allows you to do things, and it's fun. Guitar is fun. You should try it, you know? Yeah. Then there's the frets. These are different. These are another way to control the sound of the note. If you push on the fret, the frequency, it will become tighter and the frequency will increase. This is the same with things such as violins, where if you put your finger on the fret, it will increase the frequency and it will change the sound and it will become. An example of fret work is like starting here, 0. That's just me. It's just me playing up the neck of the guitar, and it's basically that's how frets work. You're tightening the string the further you go up the fret. So yeah, it's pretty interesting on that way too. It's just that's how frets work. These are picks. They're not that important, but they allow you to play better sometimes depending on the song. This is a tuner, and the tuner, basically you put it on the top of the guitar and it detects the vibrations through the guitar and then converts them into digital, which converts them onto the screen and it finds the nearest note, and usually it will try and match that note, and it will tell you how to match it. The strings go, an easy way to remember them is from the bottom string to the top, it's Eddie 8, Dynamite, Goodbye Eddie. It's an acronym, and it basically tells you all the strings there, and it shows them on that, and it's pretty easy to understand.
Now, as I was talking about with tuning, you see the string vibrates and then it travels up the neck of the guitar, and then you have like E string that's in tune, A string, and basically it just detects the vibrations.
This is the same. This is just a diagram of how certain chords will work, but this is a pentatonic. Basically, certain notes sound better together, and this is just because they are. I'll explain it later, but it's complicated in music theory and all this special stuff. But basically, this is how most chords are formed, and there's always 5 notes that are the same in it, and that's how, like, for a C chord example, as an example, the C chord always will have you can play it in many different ways, but it always has to have the 5.
An example of a pentatonic scale, this is the most preferred one by guitarists, it's like... And you can also play any note within this and they'll sound good together. Or like... Yeah, anything like that.
This is a tuner. Say you want to tune it to the middle, it won't sound good. Unless, if you tune all the rest of the strings to the same amount, it could sound good. It would just sound weird, but it would sound similar. It's because the notes are different that it sounds bad. This is a triad. It's a part of music theory. It's basically 3 notes that are the same. There's an E minor and an E major. They're written differently, and basically it goes E, G, B. And basically, how it works is there can be many inversions where any E, G, and B can be played on the keyboard, at the same time, and it will make a similar sound. And this is important because this is basics of music theory. These certain notes sound better together than other notes that don't, like random notes being in there that don't match. And basically, this is kind of the same. I'm just writing it. Well, I'll write it here soon, and then I'm going to move on to octaves. So, there's also a thing called an octave, where you have both notes at the end of a spectrum, and each of the notes on the spectrum will have different. You have 2 E's apart, and there's the first E and then the second E, and it's a complete octave apart where it runs through the entire note cycle back to E. I'm writing it here, and basically this is basics of music theory. I'm not an expert of it, but it gets kind of complicated. But just know that certain notes sound better together because our brains release certain chemicals, such as dopamine, that make us happy when we hear certain combinations of notes and stuff because they emit an emotional response. And that's why we find certain chord progressions more pleasing than others. It's complicated and a bunch of psychology stuff, but that's one of the biggest reasons why we like certain notes over others is because of our brains.
One thing I forgot to mention that I'll mention real quick is there's lots of chords too, like power chords and other things like that, like... And they sound good together just because they follow the scale rule and stuff, and like... And then there's also some other ones like... And then there's others like... But mainly there's power chords and then power chords and then actual chords. And they're pretty much, they all can produce similar sounds, but they're all useful when you're playing guitar.